So let's take a journey back in time, to the mid-19th century, to a place in the Scottish Highlands called Glengarry. It's a region of just breathtaking beauty. But, as we're about to see, underneath all that beauty is a truly shocking story of cruelty. And it's all based on a first-hand account from someone who was right there. This is the story of the Glengarry Evictions.
You know, the writer Robert Summers really just hit the nail on the head here. He saw this so-called improvement policy for what it was, a policy of barrenness and barbarism. That single quote perfectly frames the conflict we're going to dig into. This clash between the cold logic of progress and, well, basic humanity.
Okay, so our story kicks off with a journey. The person writing this account is traveling deep into the heart of Glengarry, and he's just stunned by the landscape. But what he finds is that all this majestic beauty is hiding a really profound and unsettling emptiness. Let's follow him step by step. I mean, he describes the scenery with this incredible language, this wild, stern grandeur. Just try to picture it, right? Huge mountains towering over you, a roaring river, rocks just piled on top of rocks. It's that raw, epic Scottish landscape you see in movies. It feels ancient, powerful, and totally alive.
But here's where it gets strange. For almost 34 miles in this incredible landscape, there's nobody, not a soul. And this isn't some uninhabitable wasteland. No, this land is empty by design. The people who lived here, farmed here, they've been completely replaced by sheep and game, all for the benefit of wealthy hunters.
And yet, the people left ghosts behind. The author starts noticing these haunting little traces of their lives everywhere he looks. You can still see the lines, the furrows from their plows in the fields. The wells where families got their water are now all choked up with weeds. It's almost like the land itself is refusing to forget the people who were torn away from it.
Eventually, this journey leads him to a very specific part of the estate, called Knoydart. And it's right here that the reason for all this emptiness becomes horribly, horribly clear. This is where the so-called improvement was carried out in the most brutal way imaginable.
What the narrator finds there is, well, it's a scene of just total devastation. As far as he can see, there are these black scars on the green landscape, marking where homes once stood. There are burnt rafters scattered in the grass, walls are just smashed in, and then there's this one detail that's just heartbreaking. Grass is already starting to grow on the hearthstones, the very spot where families would have gathered for warmth.
So what was the excuse for all this? What was the logic? Well, the stated goal, the official line, was to improve the land, clear it to make way for more profitable sheep farming and hunting estates. But the reality? It was the exact opposite. The country was, in the author's words, transformed into a wilderness, and the land, once lovingly cultivated, was now condemned to perpetual barrenness.
You see, this was never just about land. This was about people. And now, our narrator shifts his focus away from the landscape of destruction to the personal, absolutely devastating stories of the families who were driven out. Let's actually meet some of them.
First up, the McKinnon family. You've got John, his wife, and their 6 children. Look at the ages here. Archibald is 17, and it goes all the way down to little Mary, who's just 2 years old. This wasn't some abstract economic policy. This is what happened to a real family with real children.
So once their home was destroyed, the McKinnons literally had nowhere to go. Their first instinct was just survival. They were forced to, and this is a direct quote, burrow among the rocks near the shore, almost like animals trying to find shelter. After that, they managed to find a slightly better but still grim refuge inside the ruins of an old, roofless chapel.
And here is where the true human cost becomes almost unbearable to read. Mrs. McKinnon was pregnant when they were evicted. Just 4 days later, from the shock and the exposure, she gave birth prematurely. The hardship, the cold, the lack of food, it all brought on consumption, tuberculosis. And the author is chillingly direct about this. He says there was no chance whatever of her recovery. They essentially handed her a death sentence.
Then there's the story of Elizabeth Gillies, a 60-year-old widow. She just flat out refused to leave. This land was her home, her entire world. She actually told the factor, the estate manager, that she would rather be buried alive in the rubble of her own house than be forced to leave her country.
And how did they respond to this old woman's defiance? With brute force. The account says 2 men grabbed her and started dragging her out. She fought back, struggling, grabbing onto anything she could reach, posts, stones, taking what the author calls a death grasp of her own home. It's just an image of pure, violent desperation. But destroying the houses? That was just the beginning. What came next was a systematic campaign of cruelty, designed to make absolutely sure these families couldn't find any rest, any shelter, or any mercy at all.
Get this, the factor issued an official order. Anyone who still lived on the estate was forbidden from helping the evicted families. You couldn't give them shelter for a single moment, day or night. Any act of basic human kindness was outlawed. If you helped, you'd be evicted yourself. The families were totally, completely alone.
So this just created this awful, cruel cycle. Imagine it. A desperate family scrapes together some kind of makeshift hut from the ruins of their old home. A few days go by. Then the factor's men show up again, and without saying a word, they just tear it down, leaving the family exposed to the wind and the rain all over again. This wasn't a one-time thing. It was repeated, systematic torture. Six times, the factor's men came back and destroyed these little temporary shelters 6 separate times. Can you even imagine the psychological torment? Building a fragile refuge for your children only to watch it get torn down again and again and again, all while these raging Highland storms are blowing through? Now, the author isn't just a passive observer in all this. After witnessing these horrors firsthand, his account transforms. It becomes this passionate call to action, a plea for justice in the face of what just seems like an unstoppable, inhuman machine.
And his appeal is so simple, so direct. He's begging the public for canvas tents, for warm clothes, for food. But it's more than that. He's asking people to raise their voices, to speak out against this barbarism. He's asking them to demand for the people of the Highlands the exact same measure of justice and fair play that was supposed to be the right of every single person in Britain. Look, the Glengarry evictions happened more than 150 years ago. But this story leaves us with a question that feels, well, painfully relevant even today. Whenever we talk about progress or economic development or improvement, what is the human cost? And maybe more importantly, who gets to decide which lives are worth sacrificing in its name?